Hello and thank you for watching my tutorial. Today we are going to make a pair of earrings with an Oriental inspiration. I encourage you to use more in your work special clays, and today we are going to use copper metallic polymer clay. I also encourage you to use more metal leaves in your work. They are a great combination. We're used with polymer clay. And I have this nice project for the creation of Oriental inspired statement earrings, but of course you can make a pendant and you won't have to repeat the process twice, or you can make a brooch. In case you decide to make earrings, I suggest you make the two earrings in the same time, in the sense that you apply a technique to one earring and then you do the same thing on the other earring. I think this is easier, because if you decide to make the entire earring and then you have to repeat all the steps for the second earring, you might not be able to establish if you've done the same thing. And anyway, I consider it's easier to do both, one after another, one step after the other, and check against the other earring to see if they look alike as much as possible for handmade earrings. So we can attack the project. I have conditioned the polymer clay. As I said, I'm working with the copper metallic polymer clay, and I passed it through a thinner setting, because we are making a project, an earring that will consist of 2 layers. So it's better to work with thinner sheets of polymer clay, not to have in the end a too bulky earring, I would say. I have conditioned less than a small package of polymer clay. It depends on the size of the final earrings. You can use less or more polymer clay. I am using a texture plate to texture the back of the earring. This will be the back of the earring. So I start by texturing the polymer clay sheet that will represent the back of the earring. You can use a roller, and if you decide to use your hands, you have to really press well into the clay to get a good impression. So I have prepared 2 sheets of clay, because I intend to cut 2 petal shapes that are larger shapes, and 2 smaller round shapes, and I wanted to make sure that I have enough clay to do this. I also suggest you to wear gloves for this project in order to avoid leaving fingerprints on your work. So I'm using a petal cutter which is rather large because I intend to make a statement jewelry piece. And I cut 2 petal shapes. And using a smaller round cutter, I cut 2 round shapes. You should make sure that the edges are very neat and neatly cut, I would say. If not, you should work a little bit on them. As always, this will avoid the sanding and polishing part. So, as I said, the back is the textured, the side that we textured using the texture plate. And now it's time to construct the design of the earring, to decide how would you like the final earring to look like. And when I'm happy with the look of the piece, I align the pieces together to make sure that I keep a consistency in the design for the 2 earrings. And then I use the round cutter to make a little sign on the clay, and I will use this guiding line to cut a round shape into each petal shape. And then we check if the round shape fits well. And then I smudge the clay and I put the pieces together to make one piece. I do the same for the second earring. So this is going to be the base of the earring. You can work on the shape until you are happy with it. Next, I'm taking some conditioned polymer clay. And I will use this clay to make two molded faces. You can buy molds for making faces in the store. I prefer to make my own face mold, and I use a molding compound which is called Oyumaru. So this is the mold that I am going to use to mold the two faces for the earrings. It is made, as I said, with Oyumaru, and this is a molding compound, and it is reusable. If you don't need a mold anymore, you put it into hot water and you use the compound to make a different mold. And for this project I have used this face, the face of this little statue. Then I cut 2 units of polymer clay. And I'm doing this, I'm working with the same amount of clay to try to have consistent mold faces, even though the molded faces might be a little bit different one from another because of the pressure and everything. But at least I'm using the same amount of clay to have the same size, I would say. So you press the clay into the mold, you press on the mold as well, and then you remove gently the mold, and you have to be very careful not to distort the molded design. You might want to work a little bit on the design to add some finishing touches. And then I use the round cutter to trim off the excess clay. And then I gently smooth out the edges. I did the same thing for the second molded face. And next I'm using a Fimo Oriental texture plate. And the conditioned sheet of polymer clay. As I said, you can use a roller or a brayer to push the clay into the texture sheet. And then I use the same round cutter to cut out the parts of the design that I am going to use to embellish the earrings. So I'm cutting a little bit of the bottom of the round shape because I want to fit the molded head. And we will make together the part from the bottom. This was initially I wanted to make this kind of design, and I used a texture stamp to texture a strip of clay that I attached underneath the face. And my initial idea was to use mica powders and spice everything up and add a little bit of shine to the design. But then I have changed my mind, and I had, I think, a better idea to give an even more oriental look to these statement earrings. So after placing the upper part on the base, you will have to trim off some excess clay. You can use the same cutters. So as you can see, I'm not pressing the elements of design into the base, because this is just so I'm trying out the idea. I'm not pressing everything together because there are more things to do before putting everything together. I have used the round cutter to shape a little bit more the earring. So I'm cutting on the sides. I'm sorry. And it's up to you to decide what is your favorite shape. How would you like your Oriental inspired earrings to look like? Don't forget to place a jump ring into between the two layers, between the base and the round textured design. And you have to sandwich the jump ring between the two layers, and then, of course, using gloves, you'll have to press the two layers together, and so the jump ring will really stick inside. And that's when I decided to use the abalone metallic leaves and not mica powders. So I'm preparing the abalone metallic leaf. And I'm pressing it into the textured design. And for some designs, it depends on the design. For some designs, when you do this, you have a very good, a very nice result. But for this pattern, I wasn't very happy with how the leaf embellished the texture. So I decided you have to burnish a little bit the foil into the polymer clay, and you can see the design shows a little bit. Yet I consider it was too subtle for this kind of statement earrings. And finally, I took out the textured piece and I applied once more the same texture, pressing very, very well. And this time I had a really good result. I was happy with the piece. But by pressing down on the clay, the piece got distorted, so it was a little bit distorted, so you have to use the same round cutter, the same size of round cutter, to cut again a piece that will fit to the earring base. And you have to sandwich again the jam ring between the two layers and press very well to have it really fixed between the two layers. Of course, I'm doing the same thing for the second earring. I'm peeling off parts of the leaf from the margins because I want a little bit of the base to be visible, to have a little bit of contrast between the metallic area, the golden and abalone area, and the copper base. I'm imprinting the same pattern, and I'm pressing very, very, very well on the texture plate. And I'm very happy with the result. I'm using the same cutter, and I trim off the excess clay. And I again sandwich the jump ring between the two layers. Next, I'm applying a larger leaf on a sheet of polymer clay. So you only have to, you put gently the leaf onto the polymer clay, and then you burnish it with your hands into the clay. And you have to remove the parts that are not necessary and keep them for other projects. As I said previously, I'm using a stamp, and I press the stamp firmly into the clay, also into the abalone metallic leaf. And then using the rigid blade, I cut out the textured strips. You can store the scrap clay, these parts that you removed with polymer clay and foils on top, and use them for other projects. You can store them in sealable bags and use them for other projects. You can roll them into beads. And for the margins of the strip, I am using the round cutter. I try to have the strips equal in size as much as possible. And then I model it a bit, the strip, and I try to arrange it on top of the base. And when I'm happy with the placement, I gently press it into the base. The foils will crackle a little bit, but this will be a very nice effect on the finished design. And you'll have to use the cutter to trim off the excess clay and to have the initial shape of the earring again. Make sure that the elements of design are very well pressed into the base of the earring, and check a little bit against the face mold, against the design, if there is enough space to place the face between the two elements of design. I will do the same thing to embellish the second earring. So I put a little bit on the string, and then I try to place it onto the base, starting from the middle. So I'm repeating the same steps for the second earring. As I said, I think it's better to do both earrings in the same time, in the sense that you are applying one step to one earring, then you go to the other earring, and at any moment of the process you can check one earring against the other and arrange them to look as similar as possible. Don't forget to check if the molded face fits inside the design. Look a little bit at the molded faces. You have to decide if there are a little bit of finishing touches that you want to apply to the earring or to the molded faces. And then I added a little bit of copper, but finally I didn't like the result, so I would suggest not to add copper on the faces, because this might put accent on different parts of the face, and I don't know, I didn't like the end result. So you can try this and decide for yourself if you'd like the look of the earrings with the copper metallic mica on top. And when you are happy with the shape of the mold, you can press it into the final design. And you can cut tiny bits of clay with a leaf on top, of course, to fill in the gaps that might exist in the design. So I do this, I add little pieces like in a mosaic to embellish the design and to make sure that there are not gaps that would not look nice in the finished piece, of course. I do the same for the second earring. I make sure that the molded face looks exactly how I would want it to look. I also make sure that it fits inside the design. And then I press it gently into the base. And I'm using again little pieces like in a mosaic to embellish the piece. So you have to work a little bit on the piece until you are happy with the design. until all the gaps in the design are filled with tiny mosaic pieces. Next, I am using gold metallic mica powder to color a little bit the edges and of course the back. I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was off camera. But it's up to you if you want to color the margins. Maybe you would want a contrast between the margins and the gold design. I have decided to use a little bit of foil to put on the back of the earring. I thought it would be interesting. It's up to you if you would do that or not. Anyway, I suggest you to use the gold mica powders to embellish a little bit the back and to put some emphasis on the textured design. You'll have to repeat the process for the second earring, of course. As always, you'll have to take care of the back because earrings, pendants, they flip, so you get to see the back as well. So in order to have really nice and professional jewelry pieces, you have to have a very nice looking back as well, not only the front but also the back. And you have to check the pieces one final time. And if you decide to hang little bits that you can make using the scrap clay, or you can add any other kind of glass bits, if you add them in the design and you do this before baking the pieces, or you can push them into this design and take them out and bake the piece and glue them afterwards. And in this case you can use acrylic beads, because as long as you don't put them in the oven, there's no risk of melting. I decided to embellish a little bit more the design, and I am using alcohol ink markers. I'm using a light green, just to add a little bit of green, because in fact the abalone metallic leaf already has some greenish tones inside it, but I wanted to enhance a little bit the green. And a little bit of yellow, using the same kind of ink markers, alcohol ink markers. You can use piñata inks or any other brand of ink, and a brush to do this. So as I said, I decided to put some glass beads to embellish the design, and I'm using the etching pearl, but I'm not cutting all the way through. I'm just cutting, I'm just pressing a little bit in the design, but I won't make a hole, so when you flip the earring you won't see a hole on the back of the earring. And because I'm not using the tool to make a hole, I will have to use the etching tool to take off the clay. And thus I will have a little let's say space in the design in which I can press a glass bead. And if you are using, as I said, glass beads, you can use liquid clay and press everything and press them into the design and bake the piece with the glass bead inserted in the design. But if you want to use beads that are not glass or metal, so they would beads that would melt in the oven, you check them against the design to see if they fit, and then you remove them, you bake the piece, and you glue them with an epoxy glue or any kind of glue that you have already used for polymer clay, and you glue them after baking the pieces. So in my case, as I am using glass beads, I am pouring a little bit of liquid polymer clay. And then I'm pressing the bead inside. To really have it trapped a little bit inside the clay, if possible. And I also decided to add some dangles, so we'll have to make some holes to be able to attach the dangles. I'm making a hole in the middle to attach a larger bit and 3 little holes on the sides for smaller bits. We'll have 7 bits in total that will dangle underneath the earring. I am using the tip of the etching pearl to do the holes. You can use a needle or any other kind of tool that you normally use to poke holes into polymer clay pieces. You have to check for the last time that you are really happy with the design, because now the pieces are prepared to go into the oven. So if there are slightly things that you would want to modify, now it's the time to make the finishing touches. Check the front of the earring, check the back of the earring, check the sides, of course. And if everything is alright, you can put the pieces into the preheated oven at the temperature recommended by the polymer clay manufacturer for 30 to 40 minutes. Then once they've cooled down, I suggest you use a varnish to seal the pieces, because we have used foils and mica powders, so you have to seal everything together. I suggest you use transparent varnish. Here I'm using Cernit transparent varnish. And you apply it all over the piece, on the sides as well. And once the face of the earring has dried up, you flip the earring and you apply the varnish on the back as well, because as I said, we have used foils and mica powders on the back. I'm using a hand drilling tool to enlarge a little bit the holes that I poked into the polymer clay. And then using ball findings, I embellish the earring with little dangling beads. I am using these beautiful glass beads, but you can make your own beads. You can use, as I said, the scrap clay decorated with the abalone foils, and I'm sure you will get very nice polymer clay beads. And you can make these kind of beads. You can make 3 larger ones for each earring to decorate the earring, and also smaller ones for the dangles. So I took a ball finding, I inserted the glass bead onto it, then I trimmed off the excess and I used the pliers to make a loop, and then I put it into the hole and used again the pliers to close the loop. And the last thing, I attached the earring finding. Thank you for watching my tutorial. I hope you liked it. I hope it will inspire you to make your own style of oriental pieces, earrings, brooches, pendants, I don't know. It's up to you to decide. Please join our tribe. Subscribe to learnpolymerclay.com for more fresh polymer clay inspiration. Thank you.